Hello everyone, my name is Alex. I'm a 2000 rated over-the-board chess player, and in this series we're going from 1000 to 2000 elo in chess.com rapid games, where I'll be explaining my thought process as best as I possibly can for your education and entertainment. Today we're facing a Caro Kann. I normally play the b3 lines against the Caro Kann, and I may play that. I'm trying to decide whether I want to do something else though. Like, I could play c4 and go for the accelerated Panov Attack, which is actually quite a good system for white. I could go d4, and I could play an exchange, I could play an advance, I could play a fantasy, although I don't love the fantasy. I could play knight to c3. Let me think. You know what, we'll play the Panov. We'll play the Panov. Let's go for it. Take and then c4. Now, honestly, I don't think I've really played the Panov myself in my life. However, I figure that I know pretty well how to play against it with the black pieces. So I should have a relatively good understanding of it with the white pieces. Normal play is knight to f6, knight to c3, knight to c6, knight to f3. And then black has a few options. He could play bishop g4 there. Not sure I actually want to allow that, though, because I don't really know the bishop to g4 lines. Alternatively, after knight to c6, I could go bishop g5. That's one of the more obscure variations. The issue with knight c6, knight f3, bishop g4 is it's a very drawish line. There's like a forced endgame you can get to in that line, and I don't really want to go to a forced endgame. I don't like doing it with the black pieces, and I don't really want to do it with the white pieces. So, okay, I could play this. Bishop g5, however, I know is a move, and I think I'll probably play it. I believe the correct move for black here is bishop to e6. Now, the Panov is an interesting line because it basically takes your opponent out of traditional Caro Kann theory. Taking... is that good? Can't I just go d5? I feel like this is really dangerous. Maybe I can go knight f3 and then d5? Although knight f3, bishop g4, bishop c4... Bishop takes looks uncomfortable. If d5, knight to e5. Oh, there's got to be something here, I'm sure. I'm pretty sure black's not supposed to take yet. I don't think I've... yeah, I'm pretty sure bishop g5 is a line. Taking, I'm sure, isn't supposed to be played, though. But I'm trying to figure out why. Knight f3 does prepare d5, but knight f3, bishop to g4, I don't like the look of. If d5, knight e5, if f4, then there's knight d3. Again, bishop c4. If queen d4... maybe I can trade queens and queenside castle. Oh, yeah, that actually looks quite good. Something like knight to e6, take, knight to b5 looks pretty good. That does look pretty good. Okay, so I think taking is the correct move. I honestly don't know, though. I may be completely wrong, but this looks about right. Be very interesting to check this with the engine afterwards. Of course, I want to play the move knight to f3, but I just encourage bishop to g4, which I don't really want to encourage. If my opponent does it, like, right now, for example, I can probably go f3, to be fair, for a start. Or I could just move my queen, maybe. Like to b3. There's no knight a5, because I'll take on f7 with check, king moves, and then I'll, I don't know, play something like queen to b5. which looks completely winning. Although often the queen does go on a4, and the bishop coming to b5 can put a lot of pressure on this diagonal. But yeah, we'll see what my opponent does. We'll see what he does. I definitely have ideas of playing d5, and after knight to e5, going bishop to b5 check, and if like bishop d7, queen a4. I think some of those lines can be quite good. And it's always an interesting position with the Panov, because there's a thing in chess, right? There's a concept in chess where there's dynamic play and static play, right? So, okay, not play, but like themes. So if you look at the statics of this position, right? Black is probably better because he has 2 pawn islands, right? And the pawns can support each other well. In my position, however, I have 3 pawn islands, but the main issue is this d-pawn. The fact that the d-pawn is isolated and therefore can't be protected by any other pawns. But the idea in the Panov is you go, okay, I've got an isolated queen's pawn. You can try and get it if you want. But I'm going to get really good active development around my isolated queen's pawn. So whilst you may have the static advantage, I'm going to try to compensate for that with my dynamic play. Hopefully that makes sense, right? So that's one of the interesting parts of the Panov attack. And I don't know, maybe d5 was a better move. Maybe knight to f3 was a better move. Maybe I'm supposed to take this knight. I have no idea, to be totally honest. But yeah, I don't think we have a bad position by any means. I think black has got to be pretty careful in this position. For example, I've obviously discussed if queen d4, knight d4, queenside castle. I think we're probably better. Because we have a lot of pressure. And yeah, we're down a pawn, but we have a lot of dynamic play. If knight to d4, I think we can probably go knight to f3. And if knight f3, queen f3, we're ready to castle. We're ready to go rook to d1 and apply a ton of pressure. Okay, my opponent does take with the knight. All right, let's think. Wait. Here's an interesting thought. What about knight to b5? No, it doesn't quite work. Maybe knight to e2. I don't think my opponent can take because of bishop takes f7 check, forcing the king away from the defense of the queen. The problem with knight f3 is my opponent takes with check. So knight to e2, e5 looks like the only move. To me, it seems like the only move. But then, I don't know. Maybe I can take. Knight e2 looks pretty good though. If knight to e2, knight to e6, trying to back out of the position and block up this diagonal and defend the queen. Bishop b5 check. Bishop d7. That looks decent for black. Very interesting. Yeah, this knight coming back to e6 looks like a good idea in many of these lines. Maybe knight f3 is the best move. And if knight takes, queen takes, then I'm just going to put a ton of pressure on the black position. Which seems viable. If e5, I can just take, so that's the benefit of knight to f3. If knight goes back to e6... my bishop is under attack. If I take, knight takes. Knight e5, there's knight to e6. Although I do have knight b5. Although knight e6 defends c7. I think that's good. I think it's good. I'll show you after the game some of the lines that I was trying to calculate. But this is honestly the best that I think I can do. So knight e6 is what I'm expecting. If my opponent takes, I think I'm much better. Yeah, I'm down a pawn, but I think I have plenty of compensation for being a pawn down. Maybe I don't, but I think I do. You know, castling, rook d1, rook c1, knight b5, maybe knight to d5 in some lines, maybe knight to e4 to try and play on potential pins. I think there's a lot of counterplay I can generate. Maybe bishop b5 at the correct moment, trying to draw this bishop away from the defense of b7, you know, that kind of thing. If knight to e6, I do need to figure out what I want to do there. Maybe the immediate knight to e5 is quite good. Oh, wait. My bishop's hanging, though. It's a really cool idea. It's a really cool idea. But if queen d1, rook d1, knight to g5, I don't have a follow-up. Therefore, I think that after knight to e6, I need to leave my knight on f3 defending my bishop. That seems to make sense to me. But how do I actually apply pressure? Because I probably want to be playing with, you know, an initiative if I'm going to be down a pawn. I don't really want to take this because that just helps my opponent. Yeah, he does go for it. Maybe queen to b3. Maybe queen b3. Declining a queen trade. Putting pressure on this diagonal. And preparing rook d1. That looks viable. Does look viable. I could castle. And if take... That does look pretty good. If take, e6, knight b5 looks pretty winning. Rook b8, check, king e7. I mean, I'm a pawn down, but I don't know. This looks really tough to defend for black. I do like the look of queen b3. I do like the look of it. Taking looks like suicide. Knight takes. E6 is essentially forced. Rook d1. Queen c... maybe queen b6? Offering a queen trade. Maybe I have knight to b5? Maybe? I'm not sure, though. What else do I have? I have a check. Bishop d7. Knight to e5? No. No, that just hangs my bishop. That just hangs my bishop. And if I take, then he'll take back with the e-pawn. He'll get his bishop out. He'll castle. I have no knight coming in, so that's out of the question. Out of the question. The immediate knight b5 doesn't seem to do anything, to be honest. It doesn't accomplish a single thing. Maybe I just castle and allow this trade. I think I'm going to do that. My thought process is that even if the queens come off the board, I think I have a lot of play. Okay, g6. Interesting. Interesting. If I take, well, then this bishop takes. That doesn't really work. If I go knight to b5, is there a threat? Yeah, kind of, because I'm threatening to take the knight and then go knight c7 in some lines. Maybe I can take this. Take Queen D8. If King D8, Rook D1, King E7, I have check. So if King E8, I have check. Yeah, okay, that looks quite good. If King C7, I have check. Yeah, I pick up this pawn regardless. Maybe I should start by taking. If knight takes, take, and knight to d5, that's just a fork. I think that works. I think that works. I don't see how black defends everything. Maybe I will be correct in my belief that despite being down a pawn, we should have enough play for it to be worth it. But again, remains to be seen. Remains to be seen. I still have to prove this. If king takes, bishop takes, pawn takes, rook d1 was my plan, yeah. If king c7, knight d5, yeah. Although, wait. Wait, it's not so simple. It's not so simple. Because if king takes, well, rook d1 immediately does this. So I can't really, oh no, maybe I can. Maybe I can take there then. So rook d1, king c7. Maybe I can take and go bishop to f4. If I go here and knight here, then I take here and ruin the structure. And I think that should be enough. I could even consider knight to e5, although I do hang the bishop there, so probably not, actually. Rook here. If knight back, I take the knight. If bishop blocks, I take the knight. Because, again, you still have to do this. If you go here, then check? Or maybe I take the knight first and then deliver check? I think this is good. I think this is good. I'm not sure whether it's better to bring the A rook, but realistically, there's three files that could be useful, so it's impossible to be able to order them perfectly, I think. Okay, king c7. Well, I could just take, but I'm concerned about the king coming back and me taking here, and then bishop to g7 winning my b-pawn. So, what other options are there? Well, I could take the knight. Could do this. I'm not sure what it accomplishes, though. If the king runs back, then I can take here with threats of mate. Yes. However, if I come here and the king comes forward, well, then I can deliver a check. And the king's actually in pretty dire straits, because it can't come to c6 because of check. I think this is good. I think this is good. This is such a complicated position, because I'm down a pawn, the queens are off the board, but the black king is completely stranded in the middle of the board, and king b8 looks suicidal. Excuse me? Is that not just a complete blunder? I think he's getting mated. Bishop e6, and he can resign, no? The king is completely stuck. Completely stuck. Now, I have to take this knight, because I can't do this, because the knight controls that square. But if I take the knight first, you have to respond. You have to take my bishop in some manner. But it doesn't matter. You can take with a pawn, and I can deliver this check, and you can go e5, but I'll take you anyway. So your best bet is to take with a bishop, and have to check here, check, that's mate. Well, you can block with a bishop first, but then that's mate. Yeah, there's just nothing you can do. That's hilarious. Damn, okay, maybe I need to play the Panov more. Because that was really fun. That was really fun. Yeah, okay. Well, I mean, there's obviously only one move. I assume my opponent missed this idea of backing my bishop up. I do think he had to advance his king. But yeah, this is a very satisfying checkmate. Okay, the game review is looking pretty good. Maybe I actually played it perfectly, which would be awesome because, like, I don't actually know how to play the Panov with the white pieces. Of course, I play against it with black, but, like, I haven't studied the theory from the white side. So this is the Panov. And the computer will say that it's very, very equal, but it's very difficult to prove. Get the knights out, knight c6. Here I went bishop g5. And, yeah, okay, taking is playable, but bishop e6 is better, I think. Now, my issue is, after knight to f3, bishop g4, there's this line that goes cd5, knight d5, queen b3, bishop f3, gf3, e6, queen b7, knight d4, bishop b5, knight b5, queen b5, queen d7, take, 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 and material is equal. This is basically forced. Otherwise, white loses the advantage, I think, or any semblance of an advantage. And you kind of play this endgame where, like, white's structure sucks. He has a 2-on-1, and the d pawn is very weak. I don't want to play that, man. You know, I don't know, something like this. King f1, rook c8. I don't really want to get involved. This doesn't seem great to me, or fun. So my opponent does take. I go bishop g5, sorry. My opponent takes. Okay, taking is the best move, although I can play this if I really want. And I can go for this, but I didn't like the look of it. Yeah, I have to drop this bishop back or just be passive with bishop b2. I didn't want to do either of those things. So, yeah, he takes on c4. I take back. And he takes, which, okay, is a blunder. Is a blunder. Awesome. Now, I had an idea to set a trap here with knight g to e2. This cannot be taken because after bishop f7, the king has to take and I win the queen. But if knight g to e2, I thought that either black goes e5 or black plays a move like knight e6 and I have no good follow-up. In this position, I apparently have knight b5. Yeah, that makes sense. But if king takes, queenside castle, king c7, knight b5. Okay, similar kind of thing to what we got in the game, to be fair. I went knight to f3, though, which the computer thinks is the best move. And my idea was, if my opponent takes this, then I take with the queen, put pressure on b7, meaning this bishop struggles to develop. I have good pressure on the f-file. I'm ready to play rook d1. I'm ready to castle. And I thought, okay, I'm down a pawn, but, like, I have so much development. This should be very good. And the computer agrees. My opponent retreated his knight, which was a good idea. Here I threw away the advantage by castling. Better was to take immediately. And if king takes, then I queenside castle with check, and we get a very similar thing to what we got in the game. If knight takes, knight to b5, yeah, you actually can't really stop this. I don't know why I didn't go for this, to be fair. But I was low on time. Well, I wasn't that low on time. I just couldn't figure it out. It was a bit complicated, so I castled. I figured if my opponent takes, then, I don't know, I take back. I should have plenty of compensation. And I probably do, to be honest. It's probably easier to play with white, despite being down a pawn. You know, something like knight takes, e6. This is the kind of thing I was calculating, like knight b5, rook b8, knight c7, king e7, rook fe1. I don't have an immediate knockout like we did in the game. I'm still down a pawn. But would you really want to play this with black? The only move... Wait. What's my threat? Oh, my knight? My threat is literally to sacrifice on e6. And you can't take, so you get mated. Ah, and I'm going to win your bishop with discovered check. So the only move is to go h6. And after knight takes, f takes, bishop takes, you have to do this. And after this, rook d8. And apparently white is still better because this is threatened. So you have to... Okay, that. Pretty insane. Pretty insane. Anyway, my opponent goes g6. And I finally figure it out. I realize I should take on d8, which is the correct move. I thought initially maybe I can do this, but it's not quite as good. Because after queen takes, knight b5, rook b8. I mean, I can win this pawn, I suppose. But it's difficult to really win material because... I don't know. Let's say I deliver a check, just like bishop e7, and I don't really have a win. Like knight d5, knight e6... Black kind of holds everything together. But after queen d8, king d8, rook f to d1 check, king here, the game is kind of over. I was expecting the king to go back to e8, in which case the best line is take, bishop to b5. I saw this. King e7, knight d5, and then the king has to step onto the d file, actually. And I mean, that obviously isn't good news. Worst case scenario, I can just do this and pick up the rook. So... yeah, he goes to c7, though, and knight b5 is the move. Of course, as we know, this blunders the game. I thought king b6 was slightly more testing, in which case I was going to retreat here. And if the king advances, I have mate in several moves. Rook d3, and I'm going to mate like this, apparently, which is very interesting. But yeah, my opponent goes king to b8, which makes my life very easy because we just take on e6. And my opponent has to stop mate somehow, but obviously he takes back. And yeah, because if he stops mate, he's down a full piece. So very, very interesting game. I hope you guys enjoyed that, and maybe it'll inspire a lot of you to play the Panov Attack. Now, if you want to learn how to face the Panov with the black pieces, check out this video up here. It's a very good one. And if you want to see the previous episodes of the speedrun, check out the playlist down here. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in one of those.